You're listening to the Building Stronger Agents podcast, where we interview the top solo agents, team leaders, and brokers across the country to see what makes them thrive in today's market and beyond. Welcome, everybody, to this month's monthly mastermind. My partner, John Gualtieri, is here, and we're going to go through this topic together. It should be a good one. 12 fatal errors that real estate agents make during the listing process. I think a lot of us are guilty of doing a lot of telling and talking at listing appointments, and sometimes that can end up costing us the listing, the relationship, and a commission check. So John, in all of his wisdom, has come up with 12 questions that he thinks we should be asking in order to get to the bottom of things. There's Tom. When we're actually going through the listing process, and I think this is going to be really helpful. John, as everyone knows, John's a national real estate coach. He used to run one of the largest teams with RE/MAX in Philadelphia. He's been my business coach for 17 and a half years. And we're fortunate enough to work together now. And I think this is going to be a great topic. So, John, do you have anything you want to add before I start going through these questions?
No, I think we're good. At the end of the day, I do want to, and this is not engaging in mutual admiration, but Will has an amazing team, and I've watched Will take a lot of these principles and implement them in his own real estate practice, and they've paid great dividends for him.
And we're going to find as we go through this, it's pretty basic stuff. We spend a lot of time talking about our listing presentations and how big our company is and how great we are and how we're $1 million producers. Nobody cares. All they care about is themselves and what we're going to be able to do. Let me try to mute that. Okay. All they care about is themselves, and rightfully so. That's what they're paying us for, and what we can do to make their lives easier and get their home sold. So without further ado, I will start this because John had this on his list. The fundamental problem behind these errors that agents make is, one, massive lack of preparation. We don't prepare for our listing appointments. Number two, massive lack of timing, and then lack of delivery. So he's going to go through this stuff today. So John, you ready? I'm going to give you these questions.
I'm ready.
All right. Question number one. Give me 1 second here. I'm a terrible multitasker, and now I have to make sure that nobody's left in the waiting room the whole class. All right. So question number one, where are you thinking about moving to? We typically only glean information here, but the entire basis of the question is to discover the emotional drivers behind the move. Go for it, John.
Yes. So one of the things I want to point out, guys, is these first 6 questions are while you're on the phone, before you even arrive at the listing appointment. And out of the 12, 6 are on the phone while you're making the appointment, which is why it's a bad idea to make appointments via text or email if you can help it. So this was always the first question out of my mouth. Where are you thinking about moving to? And what we do here is we just glean information. We're thinking about moving to Nacogdoches, Texas. And okay, why is that? Well, we got a job out there, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's just information. And we have to know the difference between information and the emotional drivers behind the move. And so we don't do that. We just gain information. And I told Will this morning, I want to tell you a really quick story. And this has to do with a buyer, but it's applicable to sellers too. But it's a really poignant example. When I was in Philly, I had a property in a area called Maple Glen, Pennsylvania. Guy comes by my sign, calls me on the sign, and I remember his name. His name was Vincent. And I said, Vincent, I'm just curious, what caught your eye? I love the neighborhood, da, 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 da. I said, where are you moving from? And he said, I'm moving from Northeast Philadelphia. See, info, info, info. And I said, Vince, at the end of the day, Northeast Philly is a great area. It's very suburban-like in its demeanor. Why are you coming to the suburbs? He said, my neighbor got robbed. Okay, my neighbor got robbed. So, Armand, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is my neighbor got robbed information, or is it an emotional driver? Be careful.
I said it's emotional.
Well, what's behind that is an emotional. So far, it's just information. My neighbor got robbed. And I said, Vince, I hope it wasn't on your block. And he said, John, it was my next door neighbor. I see, now we're starting to get behind it. And I said, well, I said, was anybody home? He said it was at 2 o'clock in the morning. These people were ransacking the house. There was a baby asleep next door, in the next bedroom rather, and God forbid that baby had awakened. I don't know what would happen, right? And he said my neighbors were terrified. And I wanted to say your wife must really be wanting to move. He didn't even let me get past your wife. I said your wife. He said my wife wants out of Northeast Philadelphia yesterday. See, it was all information, and then when you hit the emotional driver, you know what's going on. A connection takes place. So the point being is, when we're talking to somebody on the phone, let's understand that there are emotional reasons for the move, and there are facts. We want the emotional reasons, and knowing that is going to set the table beautifully for you showing up at that listing appointment. All right. So question number 2, Will.
Okay, excellent. Question number 2. Would you share with me if you could pick the perfect date to move, what would that date be? This question opens the door to a level of motivation dialogue.
Okay. So I'm going to put Mr. Hurley on the spot. Mr. Hurley, can you hear me? I don't think
Yes.
Todd can hear me. Oh,
Yep.
he can hear me. All right. So Todd, what is the one factor above all factors that determines whether or not we get a paycheck when it comes to a seller? What is going to determine whether that listing is going to sell and we get paid? I'll give you a hint. People always say to me, price, location, condition. Wrong, wrong, wrong.
I would say, trust in the relationship that you're developing with the person.
The level of begins with an M. Motivation. Right.
Yeah.
Price, location, condition. Okay, fine. But if the seller isn't motivated, we're not getting paid. It's really that simple. And at the end of the day, we don't even spend 30 seconds here. We don't have it as top of mind. And before you get there, don't you think it's a good idea to know the level of motivation? Is that a good idea? If that's the thing that's going to get us paid or not? And Ken Oliver and I were talking earlier today. That's the threshold question. Hey, if you could pick the perfect date to move, what would that date be? And they tell you now we got a whole basis for a motivation dialogue. So Ken, why is that date so important for you? Da 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 da. Okay, fair enough. And so what if you couldn't hit that date? What then? So Ken, let me just share with you, share with me on a scale of 1 to 7. I never use 1 to 10 because if they give you a 5, you got nothing, right? So Ken, on a scale of 1 to 7, 1 is you really want to get this job done. And 1 is you could care less if the house sells. 7, you really want to get this job done. Where are you? Well, I'm a 4. Well, Ken, tell me why you're a 4. Tell me what it would take for you to be a 6. Don't ever say 7. But you have to have substantive dialogue around motivation, and we do not do it, guys. I'm not giving you hell. I'm not being judgmental. We do not have substantive dialogue around motivation before we get there.
Excellent.
So, Rob,
ready for number 3?
I want to ask
you want to
Rob
keep
a
going?
question. Rob, so my wife always says to me, honey, are you listening to me or are you hearing static? Rob, does this make sense to you or are you hearing static?
No, yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
good. Because this morning Will didn't think so.
John likes calling people out, just so everyone knows. Okay, number
Let's
3.
see.
You ready, John?
I'm ready.
All right, number 3. Have you thought about what price you would be willing to accept for your property? Not knowing this information can cost us dearly when we discuss pricing at the listing appointment.
So, Ms. Spencer, lead listing specialist with Spencer Properties. Why is this an area where you could get into deep kimchi if you don't know the answer to that question before you get there? Why?
I mean, you want to find out what's behind the curtain first.
Well, exactly. I mean, if we go there and we start discussing price with the seller and we don't have a clue as to what they believe they want to receive for the price for their home, we could get bowled over. Like it's like, we're blindsided. If the property is really worth, $500,000 according to the comps, and they want 750, don't you want to know that before you get there? Or would you rather be sideswiped when you deal with the pricing issue? You pick, right? You pick. And I'm going to put somebody else on the spot here. So let me think. Well, who do we want to put on the spot?
Oh
How about
gosh, I don't
Armand?
know.
How about Armand? Armand. So I've had sellers say to me, well, John, that's why we're having you out, right? To tell us the price. How do you respond to that without seeming like you're being belligerent?
Honestly, that's one that always catches me. Not sure how to respond to that one.
Well, do what Will does. Will says, what are you,
Well,
stupid?
I get it.
That's what he says
You
to
get a
sellers.
lot of mail, you get a lot of information in the mail. Just curious, what do you think your home's worth? If you had to pick a number.
Well, perfect lead in. And if they said to me, well, John, that's why we're having me out. And I would say, hey, fair enough, guys, but you must have a number in mind. I would probe a little bit because why? Because when you sit down to discuss price and you
They
don't
know
know
what they
what they're
want.
expecting,
Bless you.
it could be extraordinarily
So they know
problematic,
they do.
right? Very
They
problematic.
might be just being nice. But they know.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. She's on mute now.
Oh, she's on mute now because I didn't know she was talking to us.
Will muted you. So,
Yeah, I muted you.
Oh,
I'm a muter.
Are
So
we
good-
muted now or unmuted?
You're unmuted. So say
Unmuted.
what you said before so we can all.
Tanya.
people always know what they want. They may be being nice,
agree,
but they have a number in the gut. They know.
Always. And I want to know what that number is before I get there, right?
Mhm.
I do. Because
And I usually, if they say, well, that's what I'm having you out for, and I say, well, we need to be, we're going to be partners. We're working together as a team. And I like to know what number you're trying to get me to support.
yeah, and by the way, guys, Will and I were talking earlier, and when you're asking a lot of questions, and I couldn't put everything in this outline, we couldn't put everything in this outline, but can anybody tell me when you're on the phone and you're asking questions of people, what the most important component of your communication is? Is the words we use? Is it the questions we ask? Is it our tonality? Which one is it? So I'll give you a hint. I said to Will this morning,
All of it.
I said to Will, I could use the exact same words and convey two different meanings. I could say, Will, could you shut that window? Or I could say, Will, could you shut that window? Right? Same words, right? Totally different tonality. And, I used to start out and I used to say, hey, Will, thanks so much for calling me. I really appreciate the opportunity. But in order to be better prepared for our meeting, can I just ask you a handful of questions? Sometimes one word, sometimes the tonality fundamentally matters. And I was saying to Ken Oliver earlier, I said, look, at the end of the day, what you don't want to do is make people feel like they're being interrogated, right? You have to be very, very thoughtful about your tonality. And the words that I use and used to use, hey, Will, could you share with me? Would you mind telling me, that kind of thing, like a sincere attitude. Americans are too anxious to get to the bottom line. I remember I did a tremendous amount of experience. I had a tremendous amount of experience with the Korean community in Philadelphia for reasons with which I won't bore you. And if you go into a Korean family's home and you want to get right down to business, you will never get that business, ever. They want to sit and talk for 30, 40 minutes or more, right? And not get down to business. They consider it rude. And in our rush to create an outcome, we can get into a lot of trouble. My coach used to tell me that the key to being, increasing the bar so that we have the highest probability of success is being prospect focused, not outcome focused. And so we're like, we want to get the appointment, we want to get the listing, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, look, we know we want that outcome, but being focused on that makes it literally impossible to focus on the other person and ask the right questions. We need to be patient, right? And we're not. I mean, come on, guys, let's be honest. How many of us are really patient throughout this process? I was. Do you know why? I was tired of getting my butt kicked. It's really that simple. I was tired of getting killed. And I finally learned. But look, let's just go over what we covered so far, Will. Why somebody's moving and the emotional reasons behind why they're moving are two utterly different conversations. And we spend all of this fact-finding mission. Where are you moving to? Da, 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 da. Yeah, when do you have to be there? Yeah. Oh, you're getting a new job. Oh, that's exciting. And we don't get down to the emotional drivers. We really don't. Okay. And look, that's an art form. It really is. All I want to do is make you all aware of it. Okay. Second question we're going to ask is, threshold questions. I call them, if you could pick the perfect date. Why? Because the reason that somebody wants to move and how badly that person or those people want to do it are two different things entirely. I had a client call me, it was last year, and he called me, it was like 5, 6 o'clock, and he said, I need to talk to you. I just brought my seller a full price cash offer with the settlement date that he told me he wanted and no contingencies, and he won't accept the offer. And I said, why won't he accept the offer? And my guy said, I don't know. And I said, where is he moving to? I don't know, somewhere in northern Massachusetts. Well, how badly does he want to get there? I have no idea. Is he renting or is he buying? I don't know, right? And I'm thinking like, dude, you know better, right? You've been with me a long time. You have no idea of this person's motivation. And the reason that guy didn't accept the offer, Mr. Smeal, is because of a lack of motivation.
Motivation.
This is a recipe for getting annihilated out there. We spend little or no time discussing the thing that's going to get us paid or not. I mean, it's just remarkable that we do this. And look, I used to do it too. I'm not preaching at you all. It's just that I took enough beatings that I decided enough is enough, right? And I finally learned this stuff. So show of hands, okay? And I'll go first. How many of you all on this call, right, spend consciously, deliberately 15 to 20 minutes or more discussing motivation? Rest my case, right?
Right.
We don't spend any time talking about what's going to get us paid. Not a good plan, right?
Plus, the other thing, John, so many people are being encouraged to interview more than one agent, and we're going to get to that next. But when you ask these motivation questions, these emotional questions, you're going to accomplish two things. You're going to get the answers and find out like where they want to be, but you're also going to be able to build a bigger bond with them, because those are the kinds of questions I think that build connective tissue between two people. So if they're interviewing you and somebody else or 2 or 3 other people, it's going to help your case. All right, ready? Question number 4. You ready, John?
I'm ready.
Will everyone who will be involved in the decision-making process be present for the meeting?
Man, this is the kiss of death, right? How many of us are asking that question? Beautiful, because I was thinking about a client of mine in New Jersey. The guy's a monster. Like, he literally goes out probably on average 4 listing appointments a week. And he got caught in this trap not too long ago, a few months back. Now, here's the trap, guys. Will all the decision makers be present for our meeting? Do you know what the kiss of death is? My husband, or usually it's my husband, my husband travels a lot for work. He's leaving it all up to me. That's the kiss of death right there. Okay. Because my guy goes over there, Mrs. is running the show. He gets a call from Mr. later on and said, "We just want to let you know, thanks for coming out. We're going in a different direction," right? Which we all know what that means. And so the bottom line is that only one person was there who's in a decision-making mode, and if the other person isn't there, we're dead. We're dead. I mean, you have to be rather insistent on it. Look, it's not going to be possible all of the time, okay? But the kiss of death is, I'm handling all of this, right? I'm handling all of this. That'll just bury us, and we want to know that. We definitely want to know that. Now, this next question, Will, if you want to read it, is a gutsy move.
Yeah. So number 5, I'm curious. My experience has been that most homeowners only interview one agent. Is it fair to conclude that I am the only agent you'll be interviewing? Ooh, that is a risky one. Go on.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the way in which you word it. I can get away with something like that, but watch my tonality. Well, I'm curious, like in my experience, most homeowners, and this is interesting that, National Association bears this out. Believe it or not, most homeowners only interview one agent. So is it fair for me to conclude that, I'm the only person you'll be interviewing? You watch your tonality, you watch the words you use. It's a gutsy move. But I just last week, one of my clients who's a crackerjack, Top Gun, didn't ask that question, and it was to her demise. She didn't get the listing because she went out there. They said, "We're interviewing other agents." Now, I don't know how anybody feels about this. Chime in if you want. But when I knew I was competing, did I want to be the last person in? Yeah. I don't know that. And then I get over there and I fundamentally find out that I'm competing. And here's the problem. After a while, when they've seen us and they've seen someone else, they start to conclude in their head that we're all pretty much the same. No matter how great of a job we did, if we're the first one in there, we can get clobbered. We really can. And so again, it's a gutsy move, but what I can tell you is it's easy to execute if you have the right tonality and you use words that work for you. Okay, the way I do it, the way Will does it is entirely different, right?
And I'll throw myself under the bus here because I've been guilty of this in the past. If you don't ask this question and you make an assumption that you're the only agent going out, where I used to screw up is that if I was just going out, it was a past client, and Tom invites me out, and I'm so sure I'm getting the listings. I helped him buy the house. I just helped his sister buy a house, and I don't bring my listing presentation with me. I don't bring a thorough market analysis. It's very easy for us to not be on our heels, on our best behavior, and sharpen our saw and provide them with the absolute most that they should get when we think that we're the only one. It's human nature to just take it for granted, and that can end up being the kiss of death because you end up afterwards. I had this happen to me. I didn't bring a folder, and I thought I'd be fine because I'd sold him the house. I'd sold the sister a house, and afterwards they're like, "Okay, well, we'll let you know." I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Well, we've got 2 more people we need to talk to." I didn't bring anything with me. And I just got in the car thinking, you are an absolute idiot. So that's another mistake that we can make, especially when we're getting good. Like if you start getting successful, it's very easy to start carrying a level of arrogance around and know that you're only as good as your last sale. It doesn't matter. And we have to keep earning the business. But a lot of times we end up finding ourselves, I found myself there, where we just don't give our absolute best when we're only going out to someone who thinks, and we think we deserve the business. Am I wrong? I know I used to complain to you about it, John.
Yeah, but
All right.
look, You make a great point, Will, because here's the quintessential question. How many listings is it okay to lose because we got sloppy? How many? 1, 10?
Right. Yeah.
Ellie, right?
Yeah.
0. Right? 0.
All right. You ready for number 6?
I am. I'm always ready.
All right.
Can I back up
Number
there for a
6.
second?
Yeah, sure.
You know, John and
Absolutely.
I just had this conversation this morning, same situation, Will, that people bought and sold through me, bought a very expensive lot, said, we're gonna call you when we're ready to sell. They did. Hey, also, by the way, we're gonna be talking to a really good friend of the family about the property. So my son and I went over, we had a great conversation, everything's great. We're like right on as far as, well, what do you think your home was worth if you're guessing, whatever, it was kind of right on. But assuming, okay, assuming, and a question that I forgot to ask probably before I got over there was, what criteria are you going to be using to determine who's going to be representing you? What criteria would you be using? So then prior to me getting over there, I might have an opportunity to figure out where I am in my process of my questions and presentation. And you know what? Got the phone call. This is a really hard phone call. We're going to go with Steve. I hate to tell you this, blah, 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 blah.
What was that? A
My
$3 million
business for
house?
years, and it
Ken?
was a $2.7 million property sold in one day.
You know,
Oh.
and Ken, do you mind if I share with these guys what because this is so important about leveraging your social proof
Sure.
this morning. And, I had shared with Will last week that, I could think of, 24 questions if I wanted. I just wanted to keep with the most important ones. But the most amazing leverage that we have as real estate practitioners are our 5-star reviews. Will, what do you have, 500 of them, something like that?
Between Zillow and Google, we've got about 900.
Yeah, so there you go. And we don't leverage them. We don't. And Ken and I were just looking online this morning, and we're looking at the top agents in his marketplace. Well, Ken and Clay have what? Ken, 150 reviews. The one guy that's competition in the marketplace has maybe 4 or 5 reviews. 3 of them aren't so good, right? And then the other guy has 6. They're all 5-star reviews, but they're 6, and these guys are major competitors. Can you imagine how much leverage it would give us if we said, hey, Will, listen, thanks so much. I'm looking forward to see you on Thursday night, but could you give me a small commitment? What's that? I'm going to send you a link to our 5-star reviews. Our clients can tell our story much better than I can. And you send that before you get there. Social proof, guys, is the most persuasive medium on the planet, literally cross-culturally. Doesn't matter if you're, on the internet in Africa or here in the States or wherever. When the consumer is looking to spend significant money on a product or a service, they look at the reviews. My wife broke her salad. Those things that spin the salad so it washes the lettuce? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's like
It's called a salad spinner, John.
Thank you. Right. So she broke it, right? She asked me to get her another one. And so I bought it yesterday on Amazon. I looked at the reviews. I'm serious. Like, I didn't want another broken salad spinner, kind of thing. But look at the leverage that gives you, right? And I was saying to Ken, look, we work our butts off to get these reviews, and then we don't leverage them. And when we're working against people, other agents who are going to be out there, 99% of the time we could say, hey, Mary, I'm just curious. You interviewed these other agents. Did they share their 5-star reviews with you? The probability is 99% that they have not. And I used to drop off a book, a binder with all my reviews in it because they weren't online yet. And I would say, did the other agents that you interviewed share their 5-star reviews? And invariably they said no. And I used to smile and say, must be for a reason. Right.
Right.
So if you have,
And we need to add the fact, John, that it was so long ago that you actually used to do it on vellum, not actually processed paper.
Well, look, I have the distinguished honor of having been the first person in my marketplace to use a digital camera. It cost like $2,000 and it took 6 photos and you had to upload them on AOL with a modem.
Oh. All right, here we go. Number 6. Are there any questions or concerns that you have before our meeting? Talk to us about this one, John.
Yeah, so for me, that was on the surface like a polite question to ask. And sometimes they would say yes, but it wasn't the commission issue. Sometimes they would say no. But here's why I asked it, because I wanted to know if I was going to get into an arm wrestling contest over my fees before I got there. And 50% of the time when I asked that question, they would invariably say, well, how much commission do you charge? Right? Aha, right? Now, question for you guys. How about if we put Christina on the hot seat? What do you think? So
I
here's
say yes. I say do it.
Oh, don't listen to Will.
so Christina,
Christina's on our team, by the way.
And I'm a shiny new agent. I've only been licensed for a couple of months, so go easy on me.
all right, so look, you got a 50-50 shot here, but you already got an A+, so don't worry about it. So if they ask us that question, should we engage it at that point in time? Should we discuss it with them before we get there?
I would prefer to discuss that in person.
Okay, so yeah, me too. All right, it's not something you want to discuss on the phone. So here's the follow-up question. Hey, Christina, how much commission do you charge? How do you handle it? Expect it's going to happen. How are you going to handle it? Say, Will said I'm not allowed. No, I'm joking.
Who's Will? You know what? I don't know. I would love some guidance on that.
All right, guys, look, if you get one takeaway here, if somebody's asking you about your fees on the phone, this is your go-to, this is your default, and you have to make it your own. This is being recorded, but make it your own. I would say, Will, I appreciate you asking that question. I get it all the time, but it would be really unprofessional of me to give you a number until I've seen your home. That's your default.
And what happens if they come back? Let's say you've got someone like me, and I give a snarky response and say, that sounds like your fees are too high, if you're not even willing to give me an idea.
So look, I would make a joke. I say, well, fair enough. I get that you might think that, but what if I told you my fees are competitive with everybody else's?
Can you just give me an idea of, John, where it's going to be? Give me a range.
Okay, so Will, I could, but I'm afraid if I do, you're going to think I'm being belligerent. And look, that's not how I do business.
So what I would say in that situation is to say, I understand there's a lot more to the fee, that there's a lot more to selling the expenses than just the commission. I promise you, at the meeting before I leave, you'll not only know what the specific commission is, what your total exposure is, but what all your selling expenses are. I'll put it in writing for you.
I mean, look, everybody's going to handle it differently, but the statistical probability of getting someone like you on the phone is a high driver based on literal numbers is about 11%, which means they're going to get someone like you because only 11% of the population, has a personality disc-wise substantially similar to yours. So 1 out of 10 times you might get somebody who's like Will, in which case you say, listen, could you call Will? He'll know what to tell you. No, joking, obviously, but 90% of the time you'll be fine. But 1 out of 10. But guys, the principle here is I wanted to flush out whether or not this was foremost on their mind. At the end of the day, we go into these situations, and Christina, you're smart to be here, but we go into these situations, we go into these dialogues as if this isn't going to come up and we're ill prepared to deal with it. But do you see how like these 6 questions before we even get there prevent us from having to experience a premature autopsy when we get there?
So John, with the commission question, I have often said to people, like in that situation where somebody like Will says, "Hey, can you just tell me what the commission is?" I've come back and said, "Well, look, commissions are negotiable. I'd like to see the property because there are so many more things that go into selling a house and doing that. And yes, we can talk about commission, but until I see the property, I want to understand your motivation, how this is going to work, and put together a whole plan, and we'll figure out something that works for everybody."
Yeah, well, it's perfect, and it's essentially the same thing. It's like, hey, I haven't even seen your house yet. I mean, when we get together, I'm happy to discuss it with you. But the principle is try to flush it out now. Don't go on the appointment and get blindsided. And that question is partially to be polite, but for me, it was to flush out the commission objection because I wanted to know if I got there. And guys, just be prepared for it. We nowadays, especially, I think that what we do is we walk around hoping it won't come up, right? And then we've got to deal with it. Okay. So Will, do you want to jump to
Yeah.
7?
So these next two, by the way, I don't see question number 8 on your list.
Yeah, I think that the number 7 is a 2-part question, so I didn't put 8 in there.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So these are the questions that we have once we get to the house. Okay, so that's where we're starting. The first 6 were on the phone while you're scheduling the appointment, so you know what's happening there. These ones will be at the house. So question 7, before you give me a preview of your home, would it be okay if we chatted for a few minutes? I really want to make sure that I understand your goals and expectations.
Okay. So what happens, okay, is we go on listing appointments and most of us get there, hello, how are you? Blah, 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 blah. Could you give me a tour of your home? That is the kiss of death, especially if you've only talked to him. Okay. But why in a million years would I say that taking a tour the minute you get there is the kiss of death? Why? Why would I say? And I promise you, it's the kiss of death. Why would I say that? I always used to say, hey, Christina, would you mind, Christina, are you married or a significant other?
I'm married, yes.
What's your significant other's name?
Mark?
Mark. Christina, Mark, before I take a tour of the home, you give me a tour, would you mind if we just sit down for a second? I just want to make sure I've got my brain around your situation and your goals and so forth. Can we take a few minutes? And then boom, we would sit down. But why am I so emphatic that you must do that? Why?
I mean, I think you need to kind of go over the stuff that you talked on the phone with and, kind of drive that home. But otherwise, they're probably going to go straight into commission again.
Yeah,
Like,
you're in
ask you
the,
that question.
you're in the right ballpark. We have only interacted with one of those people. And if we go seeing the tour and we left that other individual out of the dialogue, it could be to our demise, especially if it's her. And it's just based on the market research. Believe it or not, we all know that women are the decision makers when it comes to what house to buy. What we don't realize is women are also the primary decision makers in terms of which agent to use. Right. And this was a study that was done by a company called Breakthrough Marketing Services. They did it for Century 21 and Remax a number of years ago. And if you don't draw that other person, look, sometimes these people are not on the same page. Right. I don't, I don't want to get into this game. Let's you and her fight. Right. I want to know. Right. And so most agents, the vast majority of them get there and they want to take a tour and sit down and let's get to the bottom line. No, you draw the other person into the dialogue. You make sure that everything you went over with the person with whom you had spoken is the other person is in sync with it. And you'll be surprised how many times it's not. So this was simply an effort to draw the other person into the dialogue. All right. So the question number 8, it should have been Will 7/8. The second number 8 would be this. And let's just say you only spoke with him, right? See, here we go back to the thing that gets us paid. So, Mary, when Will and I had spoken on the phone, he shared with me that the perfect date for you all to move would be somewhere around the end of October. I'm just, asking you, do you feel the same way that that's the perfect date? I've had women say to me, "Are you out of your mind? I'm not going to have this house ready, and we can't move until at least at some time after Christmas." See, the thing that gets us paid. And oftentimes, I know this is the case in my marriage, what I think is the right timing, Karen, totally different perspective. And I'm very selective about the hill that I'm willing to die on with her after all these years. So I just, but you get the idea, right? See, there's the motivation question again. Why? Because if they're not on the same page, we might not get paid. Motivation, 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 not location, location, location. They could have the best location in the world. If they're not motivated, we're not getting paid. I'm sorry, Will.
No, I cut you off. I had a situation recently where the husband called me. It's a house in my area. And he had me come out, and the wife works. He's retired. I asked if she was going to be there. She was at work. So I said, well, can we schedule another time where I can come back? He said, I'll talk to her. Then out of nowhere, he sends me an email with a list of questions that she created with ChatGPT. So I've never talked to her, don't know her tone of voice, don't know anything about her. He sends me an email saying, Sandy would like you to answer these questions. I mean, by the way, I didn't get the listing because it was like 15 questions, and she was obviously the one, back to what you said, who was going to be making all the decisions. And then he sent me a text saying, Sandy wants to know why your business has dropped over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, I had 2 kids 5 years ago, I had 2 kids in college, and I don't put my team sales in my name anymore. So she said, your business went from 50 million to 12 million because I only have that much in my name now. She said she found it on homes.com. So the point is, I never got to talk to her. I had to answer her questions on email. I don't know how do you think I could have fixed that ahead of time, John?
Well, I guess I based on what I know, the question that begs answering, see, here I go with questions, is did you at the beginning ask if all decision makers were going to be present for the initial conversation?
No, I just said, will your wife be at the meeting? And he goes, no, she works during the day. But I didn't realize, I should have said, well, since I've been married 33 years, I know that you don't get to make any of the decisions. So should we schedule a time where she's there? But I did. Yeah, I did.
Whatever works. And look, that's the
I'd
answer.
like to jump in there. I would say, Will, it doesn't matter. This is a case where somebody didn't want to engage with you personally. They wanted to.
Right.
They went and did all their work, and they knew what was right. And I would say, I think that was a good miss.
Well,
I felt like she gave me a gift. I think it would have been a terrible. If I would have won that listing, I think it would have been. Yeah, it would have been bad. And he told me at the house I was going to get the listing because he told me about the 2 other appointments that didn't go well. And he goes, well, I just need to talk to Sandy, but you got the listing. And then that's when the questions came via email from ChatGPT. Like, what is your commission? Why do you feel like you'd be a good fit for us? I mean, these stupid ass questions. And I just called him and I'm like, dude, I'm not answering these questions. I said, have Sandy call me.
Sometimes the best listing that we take is the one we don't take.
Right. So anyway, we all lose listings. That's why we're doing this thing today. All right, question. So now we're getting into the.
Yeah, before we do that, the next question, can I just jump in with the note I made on the outline? Real quick?
Absolutely.
So now it's time to tour the home. Okay, now it's time to tour the home. And I just want to give you all a caution. You must be very, very careful at this juncture about pointing out things that they should do to get their home ready for sale at this point in time. because you could bury yourself because she's going to think you didn't like her house, right? Or he's going to think that, he's going to have a bunch of work to do thanks to you, on it goes. You have to be very, very thoughtful here. And unfortunately, what a lot of agents do in an effort to aggrandize themselves in front of the prospect is they want to show off their expertise. And I've gotten buried. I don't know about you, Will. I have gotten
So
buried.
I had one recently. Thank goodness I handled it okay. The husband said, "Should we get rid of this lime green wall in the bedroom?" Now I thought to myself, back to your story about the fence, should we take the fence down? Right. And I said, why do you ask? Why do you ask about this green wall? Do you like the green wall? And he said, well, my daughter picked the color and she painted the wall. If I would have said, no, get rid of it, I think that would have just killed. I might as well have said, your daughter's ugly and not very smart.
I have to
So
tell
luckily I said, well, why are you bringing that up? I mean, do you not like the green? And, or why do you think you should get rid of it? And at the end of the day, I didn't really care. And I said, well, the green, I love that green personally. But if you're thinking about photographs, having it photographed well on the internet, neutrals always work better, but you can make that decision later. That's what I said to him.
I mean, that's a perfect way to handle it. We only have 4 questions left. I have to.
Yeah, and I want to have time for questions and answers, and we have to be done by 4. So
Okay.
let's get
All
through
right, let's just
questions
move on
10.
then. Okay.
All right. Question 10.
Well, question 9, we're at
9. Oh, yeah.
We're discussing pricing.
Would you be kind enough to share with me if you're familiar with how a mortgage company appraiser calculates the value of any given home?
Now, why would you want to ask that question before you get into pricing? And, hopefully you'll know what they're expecting price-wise. But why do we want to ask?
Because they probably have a bank appraisal that they're leaning on. And it's the same reason you should say, if for sellers right now, one of the questions we always ask is, are you familiar with the National Association of Realtors industry changes that were in the news last year? I asked them that, then I asked them to tell me about it because I don't want to get blindsided about, well, we don't have to pay a buyer agent and we only have to pay this much now. So I asked that question as well.
Yeah, and what I wanted to impress upon them is that the only thing that matters is that's appraiser's opinion of value. That's it. Do you know what I mean?
On that day.
Yeah, the bank does not care, a rip what I think it's worth or they think it's worth. And, we try to mimic the appraiser's MO as closely as possible. But, it doesn't always, it's not always effective, but it takes the subjectivity out of the equation. And, we're explaining it's more objective. Okay, so
all right.
Question 10, the marketing.
So, John, would you mind repeating that question?
Have you heard, before we go any further, are you familiar with the National Association of Realtors industry changes that occurred last year?
I have yet.
9. I'm sorry. I thought you were asking my question. Number 9 is, would you be kind enough to share with me if you're familiar with how a mortgage company appraiser calculates the value of any given home?
I'm going to send these outlines out to you guys so they'll all be on there.
Perfect.
Will just made me change the word from exquisite to massive.
Yeah. Exquisite. I mean, come on, John. All right. Question number 10. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, our marketing strategy is very comprehensive and is designed to bring you top dollar for your home. But before I share everything with you, would you please tell me if there's anything that you absolutely want us to do or anything that you don't want us to do?
Okay, so quick story. When the internet was first becoming popular, as I said, I was literally on the cutting edge. I had this great digital camera and we used to upload the photos to the web on AOL with a modem. And I was in a really nice listing and it was going beautifully. And this woman asked me, John, do you use the internet to market our home? Man, I couldn't wait to tell her. I just went into my horse and pony show and I said, if somebody on Mars wanted to see your home on the internet, they could do that. And she turned to me and said, John, I don't think this is going to work out. And I said, how do you mean? She goes, we don't want our home on the internet. We have a lot of valuable things in here, and I just don't want them, posted all over cyberspace. And I said, no problem. We don't have to do that. And she said to me, no, it seems to be the real centric piece of your marketing. And I don't think this is going to work. So it's probably best that you leave. Long ride home. Okay. And if we start to just pontificate about the marketing
All
stuff,
the things we do.
right? And they don't want us to do something, well, definitely now you're in trouble. Okay, because now
Brokers opens and open houses are two things that you should ask them ahead of time. How do you feel about brokers open houses? How do you feel about open houses? Because there's just as many people that say, I don't want my neighbors coming through my house. And you've just said you're going to have an open house every week. So I thought I was doing something good. I would never do that. I mean, suggest an open house every week, but it's very easy to get yourself trapped there.
because you're always enthusiastic about your marketing plan. Look, at the end of the day, if that seller doesn't want something to happen marketing wise, and you tell them how wonderful your internet strategy is from Mars, you're done. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
like that's one of that. After that happened, I always ask that question because
John
All right,
and Will,
question number. Yes, sir.
before we go to number, I think Ellie and I still
11.
trying to get our heads wrapped around what the question is on 9. I don't think we, or you
I'm gonna send out
explained
the
the
outline.
appraisal thing. What's the purpose of that? What's the benefit of behind the curtain? What is any of it?
Well, Will, pointed out that the process with the whole appraisal issue and what happened with NAR and so forth is one of the reasons I wanted to know how subjective they were going to be around price, because my feeling was they needed to know that what I thought it was worth, what they thought it was worth, and what the neighbor thought it was worth is not relevant. All that matters is what the bank thinks it's worth, right? That's the only thing that matters. But like I said, I'll send these out.
And by the way, you can couple that up with, I know everybody's got a value. Zillow has a value. Realtor.com has a value. Redfin has a value. But in this day and age, the only value that matters is what a bank is saying it's worth. Are you familiar with how a mortgage company is going to assess the value of your house? So you can wrap it all together. Okay, number 11. A major part of our marketing plan is to spare no expense when taking photos of your home. According to the National Association of Realtors, the most important factor that buyers consider when deciding whether or not to tour a property are the photos. And first-class photos mean more showings. More showings will give us the best chance of receiving the top dollar. And top dollar is our main goal here, isn't it?
So the point of that question is the point of your whole marketing portion of your listing presentation, because what we do is we tell them the things that we're going to do marketing wise, but we don't tie it down to top dollar. We don't tie it down. We just say, hey, we spare no expense, Will and Mary, on photos. We take the best photographs you've ever seen in your life. Okay. And then we leave it hang there. And the reason that we do that is because buyers use the photos as the criteria as to whether or not they want to come and see your home, right? And if we get more buyers in here, it's going to bring you more money. Does that make sense? Everything that we should do marketing wise should be tied to why we do it is to bring them top dollar. Does that make sense? Ellie, we want to bring you top dollar. We write great property descriptions because that's so important to buyers, and we don't want to lose showings, because if we lose showings, we lose potentially good offers, and we want to bring you top dollar. Does that make sense? Top dollar. Does that make sense? Do you understand? Don't you agree? Right? Top dollar, top dollar, top dollar. But we give a marketing presentation like we're giving a presentation for soap, right? No, tie it down to top dollar. All right, Will.
Okay, number 12, because I want to make sure they can ask a couple questions. Covered a lot together. I'm just wondering, if you had to make a decision this evening about whether or not to hire me, would you choose me to be your agent? That's a trial close, and you can see what they say. Do you have anything to add to that, John?
Well, if they
Or should I
say
go into
yes,
the next
we're
one?
gonna have to try to mess it up. If they say we're not sure, we have the opportunity to circle back. If they say no, we're in trouble. But at the end of the day, most agents will say the equivalent of, so, what do you think? Right? No. If you had the opportunity to hire me tonight, would you do it? Okay, would you do it?
Pretty
And
basic question, but it's an important one.
you know,
The other one is, thank you so much for choosing me to represent you in the sale of your home. Before I leave, may I just cover 3 more items? It should only take 5 minutes. And then those items are, when we toured your home, I noticed a few things that you might want to consider addressing that will make your home more appealing to buyers. May I share those with you now? So don't do that while you're touring the house, because you have an opportunity to upset them.
yeah, wait till the listing agreement is signed before you go here. Really.
Right. Where's number? Okay, that's it, actually.
Yeah,
All right,
well,
cool. All right, questions. Does anybody have any questions? We're going to send, here, let me put my email in the chat.
and I'll send this out along with the recording.
Okay. If you grab my email and send me an email, if you want me to send you this, this outline, I'll email it to you. Does anybody, before we go, hopefully this was productive for everybody. We've got a few minutes now for questions. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add, or any questions you may have? Armand or, hi, Maria.
Hi. Typically, when you guys go for listing appointments, do you take that listing agreement and get it signed at that point, or do you meet with the clients, talk everything over, and then let them get back to you?
Always at that point, may I share with you why?
Yeah.
The saying goes, there's lots of slips between the cup and the lips, meaning that anything could happen. Time is not your ally in this situation, because they could talk to a neighbor, their emotional, affect ebbs, and on it goes. And I was always a big proponent of time is not an ally here, because too many things can happen. Too many things can happen, and none of them good. I don't know if you agree with me, Will, but it's really the
Yeah,
way.
and don't ever send the listing agreement via dot loop or a buyer representation agreement. Try to do that one form face to face if you can. It gives I've had probably a half a dozen where they go through the listing agreement, they come up to it with a different conclusion, or they end up having this tense conversation around it, and you're not there. I always go through the listing agreement. I try to get a listing agreement, consumer guide, and an expense sheet signed at the listing appointment, and then send them all the rest of the stuff via dot loop. I mean, if it works for you, great, but it's very risky. You could lose a couple listings a year by saying, okay, well, I'll send you the listing agreement. At the very least, go through the entire thing with them, a blank one, at the house. Don't just send them a listing agreement. Say, great, I'll send this over later, because it could go sideways fast. I've had that happen with a buyer representation agreement, because they didn't understand, how it was us negotiating with the seller to pay their fee. And he decided, we can't afford to pay you 3% or whatever. And they said, we're going in a different direction. You have no way to recover from it. So try to go over the important documents, i.e. listing agreement, buyer representation agreement, face to face if you're with them, or on Zoom, share your screen and go with them. That's my opinion on it.
Okay.
Time is not your friend. So
No.
I just want to say one thing, guys. If you take one thing away from here, it's motivation, motivation, motivation. There is a massive difference between why someone wants to move and how badly that person or that couple want to do it. Massive, and we get them confused to our demise. Right?
Yeah, you always want to get to the reason. Oh, we're moving to Chicago. Great. Why? Because of a job. But it might have been something entirely different that prompted that job. They've got a family member there who's sick, or an older parent, and they didn't share that with you. So you have to identify that, because it's going to be very helpful. Basic stuff. All right, it's 4 o'clock.
It's okay to get paid. All right, it's okay to get paid. All right, be well, guys.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
See ya.
Have a great afternoon. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Building Stronger Agents podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star review and share our podcast with your friends.